Hey YouTubers, it's me again, and today I'll be covering a range of topics from finance to choosing the right college. So basically this video is going to talk about how to choose the right school and what not to factor into your college decision. Now let me just talk about one of the mistakes that I made when I was choosing school. Basically, I have always known what I've wanted to do since like age 10, which is absolutely abnormal, and most people won't know so young, obviously, what they want to do. So anyway, long story short, fast forward to my junior year of high school. I met my first love, and basically at the time he was bound and determined not to move outside of Florida. Now, as you know, Miami is supposedly a fashion capital, but I mean it pales in comparison to LA or New York. So basically one of the major decisions that I made was to skip going to a school like FIT or Parsons, which anyone who knows about fashion knows that that's like the holy grail in the United States. And if you go to those schools, it looks fantastic on your resume. So I didn't even bother to apply to those schools because he was like, well, I don't like the cold weather, so I'm not going to move anywhere cold. So basically, I got a scholarship called Bright Future Scholarship, and I was granted the 75% scholarship where they pay for 75% of your tuition, but that's based on public college tuition, not private. So if you go to private college, then you still get a lot of the same amount. So basically, let's say it's $800 per semester. Your private school might be $5,000 per semester. Well, you're only going to get $800. So basically, I opted to go to a private school in Orlando. So of course, I got scholarships, but it didn't really help that much because of that simple fact. And so, I could have went to FSU, for instance, in Tallahassee, and if I went to FSU, I would have graduated with zero student debt. And by the way, I'm not hanging up on the shoulda, coulda, wouldas because it's pointless. I'm just, just kind of telling my story. And we break up. And so basically, I turned down the opportunity to even try to apply for any of the best fashion colleges that happen to be outside of the state. I also got invited by like a few Ivy League schools like Notre Dame and Cornell. And by the way, Cornell University does have fashion, so I could have had it all. I could have had an Ivy League school and I could have still studied my passion. But I think not going to Ithaca was a little more is than just like the relationship I was in. It was also because I thought Ithaca like is far from New York City. I don't know anyone there. Am I gonna have to walk in like 2 feet of snow to go to school? So I didn't want to go in part because of that. But I graduated with a student loan debt that I really didn't have to have because of that. So the moral of the story is, do not let a relationship dictate where you go to school. If you have a scholarship, let's say you get a scholarship to a really good school in a really good location for whatever major that you choose that route, and if it's meant to be, it will all come back together at some point in time. Everybody doesn't believe in fate, and that's fine, but I do. So I believe that if two people are working towards a goal, when you're so young in life, you shouldn't make such serious kinds of commitments. I personally believe when it comes to relationships, because I mean, you grow and you evolve so much. My standards at 25 now is very different than my standards at 18. Not that I ever had low standards, but I mean, as you grow into your own, you change in a lot of ways, and your views mature, and sometimes you become a different person. Things that I hated at 16 now I love at 25. So don't let a relationship, I don't want to lose him if I go to Pennsylvania. I don't want to lose her if I go to, you know, LA, so I'm just gonna stay stuck in this town or go to a school that's inferior just so that I can stay with this person, because it's not worth it. And by the time we broke up, I was looking actually to apply to the best schools, but because my school was private, the credits wouldn't have transferred. And the whole point of me even going to that school, besides the whole relationship bit, was because it was an accelerated program. And as you guys may know, In America, the bachelor's programs are usually 4 years, and in that particular school it was only 3 years. So I thought, okay, fantastic, I can get my bachelor's in 3 years and just get to the point, and I can stay in Orlando, which is where he was, and I can have it all. So yeah, it was no point by the time I figured out that I could apply to those best schools, because then I'd have to start from scratch, and I wasn't having that. So that wasn't an option for me. So I kind of wrote it out. So if you're in a relationship and you have a scholarship to a very good school, do not choose a relationship over the school, because you're just way too young to make that kind of decision. And when you're young, I mean, a lot of times no one can tell you anything, and my parents had no clue that that was part of, like, maybe 65 to 70% of the reason why I chose that school. They would have definitely told me, you're nuts, you're only 18, like, you need to think about your future. So think about your future first of all, because you need to be stable and you need to kind of secure your own. You can't be codependent, on someone else for your future and for your security. You know what I mean? Because if you end up breaking up, you're gonna end up really resenting that person, and I don't resent him at all. But I mean, 9 out of 10 times you end up resenting the person because you give up and you sacrifice so much. And that age, you should be pursuing your dreams. Trailblaze. You know what I mean? Set your own path. Do your own thing, and later on in life, people come back together too. I mean, nothing. I'm learning that nothing is necessarily just definite or final. You know what I mean? You might break up at 18, and who knows, after you get your career together and you finish college, high school sweethearts, college sweethearts, they get back together sometimes, and sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. You know what I mean? And I'm not necessarily saying that if you're younger you can't make a commitment. By no means am I saying that, because I mean, my mom met my dad when she was in her teens, and they're together, almost 30 years later. So it's not impossible, but just don't lose focus, and don't let a relationship be one of the core factors in deciding on the school. So what would you look for? Okay, well, once you decide what kind of major you want to get into, the best thing to do is to see the connections that that college has with those kinds of companies within your specialty. So let's say I choose engineering. Choose the best engineering school that you can afford, and see what kind of relationships they have with established engineering firms. Because one of the best ways to get into companies sometimes is through going to a school that has a good relationships with those companies. So they'll come on campus and they'll recruit you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it guarantees that you'll get into the company, but it definitely increases your chances. Another thing you want to look at with colleges is the placement rates. I mean, when you graduate, are they going to try to help you to find a job? Granted, they can't give you a job, but they should have some kind of guidance into helping you find a job. And one of the best ways to do this is to go on LinkedIn. If you're thinking about a college, especially if it's a college that's lesser known, go on LinkedIn and type in, let's say it's the University of Pennsylvania. Type in University of Pennsylvania under people, and see what kind, and even type in your major, and see what kind of jobs these people are getting. And these people aren't really getting that great of jobs, and you might want to rethink the school and or rethink the major as well. You know what I mean? And try not to switch your major too much. A lot of people end up spending 5-6 years in college because they keep changing their mind. Granted, some people don't find their calling until college, and we're all different, but if you can avoid changing schools too much, then avoid changing schools. And yeah, just see what kind of relationships the college that you want to go to has with your employers, because like I said, a lot of these employers have relationships with these colleges, and sometimes these employers might have gone to a particular college, and so they have a good rapport. And does the school have networking events? How are you going to meet people? Because networking is also critical. Do they have conferences? Do they have recruiters that come on campus? Like, what's that like? And if that's on the up and up, then you definitely would want to consider that school. Your reputation of the school within your industry. If I were you, I would call up recruiters for whatever industry you're trying to specialize in, and say, hey, what's standing on this, on such and such a school. And if they have a good standing, then you might want to consider going to that school. If the recruiter's like, oh, I've never even heard of that school, you might want to rethink that. You really do, unless you go on LinkedIn and find that people from that particular school are getting good jobs, the kind of jobs that you want to get. But if people don't even know about the school, then they might question the credibility of that school. And if they question the credibility of the school, they might question your ability um, to perform. And the name of the school isn't everything, but it's something. And whoever tells you it's not is that's a bold-faced lie, because the more competitive your industry is, i.e. fashion, the harder it is to break into certain companies if you go to a school that they've absolutely have not heard of, really, especially if you haven't had any internships. I mean, internships are probably the best way to start if you went to a school that no one has heard about. But I mean, think about it. If I come from a school in Arizona that's unheard of, and my competition are kids from Parsons, kids from FIT, from LIM, it's pretty steep, because chances are, if it's New York, a lot of these employers, including the people maybe even in HR, went to these schools as well, so they have a rapport with them. And it doesn't sound fair, but that's just the way it works realistically. And I'm not saying that it's absolutely impossible, because I consider myself quite successful for the circumstances that I pretty much put myself in. But by the same token, I had to jump higher and run faster to get to that point. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it makes you appreciate it more once you do get there. But those are some of the things that you might want to think about when choosing a school.